That's amazing. All right. So Jesse, let's go ahead and hop in, man. I'm really looking forward to asking you a couple of questions about Amboss and about Rails X. But the first thing I want to ask you is you just got back from the Bitcoin conference, yeah?
I did. I
Uh,
did.
te- yeah.
Vegas was crazy.
Yeah, tell us about it. Tell us about it. What were some of the highlights for you?
I think for the most part, getting up on stage alongside Graham Krizik from Voltage, Sean Anstey from LQWD, as well as Tyler Wood from Block. And so we got to do a deep dive on everything that's happening in Lightning. And I think someone remarked to me, there aren't that many Lightning booths, Lightning companies that we're seeing. And I just looked around and I got to say that every booth is a Lightning booth because they're all accepting Lightning payments over like through Square's recent integration, which they activated. So that was, I think, the biggest win is that it was like without a second thought. Of course, this is the way that you transact in Bitcoin. You just use Lightning. And yeah, there's a ton of things going on. There was also auctions that were happening, some phenomenal art, and yeah, it was a great experience.
So, how many of these Bitcoin conferences have you been to? I'm curious because it's a bear market. It's a Bitcoin bear market, right? So, during a bear market year, was the Bitcoin conference this year busier, maybe, than other Bitcoin conferences, or less busy? I'm curious about that.
I think it was a smaller conference than last year, but I always like going to the conferences during the bear market because there's a lot less hype. There's not just endless money flowing around, able to fund a whole bunch of scams, and instead, bear markets are for builders, and we get to see a lot more of that.
I love it, man. So, let's talk about the core vision and the product evolution of Rails X. So, my understanding is that Rails X aims to solve this decentralized financial trilemma, achieving high throughput scalability, robust security, and true self custody. That's the trilemma, right? So, how does completely eliminating a centralized order book and also custodial intermediaries and cross-chain bridges, how does that allow you to achieve this paradigm shift natively on Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, we've built infrastructure to support this, over the nearly 6 years that Amboss has been building out in this space, and it really all comes together with the Rails X announcement. Since we did build the liquidity marketplace, which was mentioned in the video called Magma, and that's been around for about 5 years, that allows decentralized liquidity providers to use the Lightning protocol, which is trustless, to be able to open channels to each other. And now with the Taproot Assets innovation, we're able to embed other assets within Bitcoin UTXOs. So we're still leveraging the strength of the Bitcoin network and the Bitcoin protocol, but now it has new assets that enable us to create better products that meet people where they're at. And a lot of people are not ready for Bitcoin's volatility, but they are ready for cheaper payments, more private payments, and
Right.
payments that settle instantly right there in front of you. And that's what this stack enables so that they can receive stable coins and you don't have to bring in other blockchains and create risks that come from cross chain bridges. That is a
Right.
very hard word to
I
say.
got caught up on that one too. So I'm curious, what is the right terminology here? When Taproot assets are created, is it minting? What's the right terminology for it's minting? So
Yeah,
Taproot
it's
assets are minted. Okay, got it. So essentially, are you able to mint a Taproot asset against BTC in some type of a liquidity pool? How exactly does that work?
we just added that to Thunderhub, which is an open source node manager. If you have LitD, so that kind of bundles all the Taproot asset stuff, you're able to mint any token that you want. So, and say how many of these tokens will you be creating? Is it part of a group so that you can have subsequent minting events within the same asset. And it also specifies what's the precisions, how many decimal places do you want? And those are some engineering decisions, but if you remain consistent with that and you identify the group, well, then you have kind of an asset that can grow in value. But anyone can create a token. That means that you're going to have to do due diligence on, well, what is backing this token? Otherwise, it's just a number on a screen. So that's kind of the gist of it, but anyone can participate.
It sounds like the new Wild West on Lightning. That's pretty cool. So you could, in theory anyway, you could mint your own crude oil tokens. You could mint your own gold tokens. You could mint, fiat dollars or yen or euros, you name it, right? And then you could also trade those assets on the decentralized exchange. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's so
Exactly
cool,
right.
man. That's great. I love that. So Amboss started by launching Magma, right, to solve the Lightning Network, its early bootstrapping problem by creating a decentralized market for channel leasing. So how did the operational data and learnings from managing Magma directly inspire the routing-based architecture of Rails X?
Yeah. These are kind of two separate things. From early days of actually purchasing channels, I was doing that via Telegram chat.
Really?
So I was like, hey, I need a channel. I'll pay you X amount to open a channel. And we just agree that, we'll keep it open for 30 days. If that all sounds good, then I'll pay you, you open the channel, everyone's happy. And we were doing that back and forth. So I was an early Lightning node operator. So, I was saying, here are my rates. If you want to buy a channel from me, get connected. That allows you to start receiving payments. And it
So,
was yeah,
so,
it was
so,
go ahead.
so Jesse, just for our audience, I don't know if everyone knows what channels are and why
Mhm.
they're so important on Lightning. Could you just explain briefly what channels are and why they're important?
Yeah, I like to think of them as a joint account in Bitcoin. Um, it is a 2 of 2 multi-sig wallet that gets created between two people. So you and I can have a channel, and I'll put in 1 Bitcoin, you can put in 0, and we've created a 2 of 2 multi-sig, and we both sign the payout of this 2 of 2 multi-sig, saying Jesse gets 1 Bitcoin and David gets 0.
I want one
Both of us,
Bitcoin. Why do I get zero?
of course. But what makes it trustless is that we both sign. Otherwise, none of us will get our funds out of this thing. And so by default, both of us just sign the payout. But once that is set up, then we both just sign a new payout. If I want to pay you $5, so then we sign a new payout that says Jesse gets 1 Bitcoin minus $5 and David gets $5 from the payout. And that doesn't need to go on the Bitcoin blockchain.
Right.
It's a side ledger. And that's what makes this super powerful, because payments can happen at the speed of a digital signature from both of us. And that allows us to reach scales that Bitcoin itself or any blockchain would never be able to achieve.
It's essentially, I guess you could call it off-chain, right?
It's an off-chain ledger.
It's a message between edge nodes. Yeah.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, so you debuted full support. My understanding is anyway that you debuted full support for USDTL and USDCL through Speed Wallet after an 18-month closed loop testing phase. So what were the critical operational learnings during that period that gave you the confidence to open this infrastructure to the broader permissionless Lightning Network?
I think the 18-month piece was a hallucination. We've
Got
been
it.
building at this for about 9 months. But overall, Taproot Assets as a protocol has been in development for quite a while. And I think it was about 2 years ago that that Lightning Labs and Tether announced that they were coming to Lightning Network. And I think we were tired of waiting. But it doesn't really stop anyone from being able to mint a Taproot asset. So Speed Wallet, who has already been using a wrapped version of USDT, well, we just expanded that and made it broadly available with Rails X. So that means that we've got a licensed provider that like already has regulatory obligations. Like they're the ones that are backing this, and working with us to show transparency, to show that the assets are one-to-one backed. And so that means that the Lightning nodes can freely exchange this wrapped USDT and USDC and just use it as a regular stablecoin.
That's great. I would love to be able to make stablecoin payments in person using the Lightning Network to buy goods and services. So if I want to go and buy a coffee, I would love to be able to buy that coffee using stablecoins on Lightning. That would be great. And it sounds like we're getting pretty close to that future. Are we almost there, do you think?
Yeah, I think we're a couple of changes to Thunder Hub away. I wouldn't, take more than 2 weeks to deliver that. I think the functionality is there. Just we haven't built in the UI for it. We spent 9 months building the back end, and now with AI, we built the UI in about 2 days.
I know.
So we've delivered this.
That's amazing. So here, let's go ahead and switch gears here a little bit and talk about the technical architecture and some of the cryptographic foundations of Amboss and Rails X. So unlike traditional decentralized exchanges on Ethereum virtual machine chains that use AMMs, requiring global state consensus, Rails X operates using a dynamic request for quote system and these so-called circular self-payments. Can you break down how these atomic swaps ensure that trades complete perfectly without exposing users to maximal extractable value attacks or front running?
Yeah, so MEV isn't a risk for Lightning. Really, it is. It's using the exact same Lightning protocol that uses a pre-image, and that's the secret that says, "Hey, you've paid this." If you know the pre-image, well, then it's proof of payment. So anybody that generates an invoice, well, they'll generate a pre-image that goes along with that, and then expose the pre-image hash. So that is what's used across the network, and it can it's actually chained like similar to like Tor routing. So it's onion routed. So each intermediate hop is decrypting a small piece of this and able to, like in their decryption, able to capture a small routing fee. And so we're chaining together a whole bunch of Lightning channels, and that enhances the capital efficiency of the Lightning Network and allows people to not have to trust any of their counterparties. And now the routing is not just in Bitcoin, but now we have other assets as well. So by doing that, we've essentially unlocked an exchange.
That's amazing. So when you say it's onion routed, that makes me think that there's a privacy layer baked in. Do I have that right?
There's a huge privacy layer. For any Lightning channel, only the participants in the Lightning channel get to see the activity. There's no visibility to outside observers. So you have truly private payments. As long as you and I keep our databases private, well, only us know about it. For a public channel, and that would be a public channel or a channel that's available for routing, the rest of the network will know about it. So it will know that we have a relationship. But if we want to do it even more privately, we could say a private channel, which wouldn't be advertised, but it also has the trade-off is that it's not available for routing. So we're not going to earn yield off of this.
And what type of yield are we talking about? My understanding is that those routing fees, tend to be relatively small. So yield could be, less than 1% APY, something like that? Or what is the yield from routing fees?
It is completely related to the volume that you're routing, and a competitive fee rate. And a competitive fee rate is probably going to be zero point 0.1 bips across the network. So it's nearly nothing, but they
Mhm.
are Satoshis that we're stacking with
Right.
every payment that goes through. And most people charge a minimum like routing fee of 1 sat, and then a percentage of the value that they're routing. But for the most part, like, it is meaningful at scale. And you have to think about it because the Lightning Network is so capital efficient. We've got $500 million that's in the Lightning Network, but the Lightning Network itself is doing 15 billion every year. So that means that it is cycling all of that money, and we are getting much more routing activity than we have capital in the Lightning Network as a whole. So it is very active capital.
So that's really the velocity of payments thing on Lightning. My understanding of that was when I was first learning about Lightning was that it looked to me almost like structural leverage. It isn't quite leverage, but it looked like that to me. Because if you have, one BTC on, let's say, three nodes, three of your edge nodes. So you got one BTC here, one BTC here, one BTC here. Those three Bitcoin on those edge nodes could facilitate the payments if there's enough velocity. They could facilitate the payments for 9 Bitcoin, I think. Isn't it like almost a 3x multiplier? Or do I have that wrong?
Yeah, I think by my math, if you're doing 15 billion and there's half a billion in the network, then the overall velocity of the Lightning Network is 30,
30. Wow.
which is incredible because that means that you're not having to create more money, which is how the traditional system works. You don't have to create more money to get more velocity. It is, a fully reserved system. You cannot create Bitcoin out of thin air in order to like create this payment system that does not use credit or debt.